Hello and welcome back to the Buchla Easel tutorial series. Last time we dealt with the low pass gate except for one section. We didn't deal with this from preamp section. Let's deal with that now. The reason I left it alone is because there's actually quite a lot of substance behind this this setting. What we get when we engage this switch in the fully up position is access to this preamp down here. Now this is mixed, or can be mixed, with the modulation oscillator. This balanced external mode merges the modulation oscillator's control signals with this preamp, but the preamp on its own is capable of generating noises without any help from anything. We want to try and ignore this external mode if we're using Cubase, because sadly we don't have access to it. Or as far as I'm aware, we don't. You need a sidechain input into the plugin in order to be able to take external audio inputs, and Arturia haven't yet implemented sidechaining in their suite for Cubase. So it's part of the VST3 protocol, and we should have options up here to enable sidechain, which we don't. So I can't send an audio signal in, but what we can see is the noise settings. Now the noise generator on its own sounds like that. So what we've got here is the preamp outputting into gate 2, and I've just turned gate 2 up. Really simple stuff. But as I said, the modulation oscillator can act as a modulating source on this sound. So if I turn this up and increase the modulation, you can hear the sound changing. It becomes easier to identify if I put it in low frequency mode, and now you can hear the triangular whoosh. Train leaving the station. So that's really cool to be able to mix those two things together to get this modulating noise source. Obviously we can apply envelopes to that modulation as well. Stomping of feet through, I don't know. You get the idea. So that's the noise mode. Now, it's all very well and good dealing with noise as an audio source. That's completely fine, everything we've just done there. But it can also act as a modulation source independently of what it sounds like. In order to take a feed from this preamp, we need to use this end out socket up here. This provides us with a modulation, a control voltage output from the preamp. So if I take this and plug it into my complex oscillator's pitch, get this running. So there's our standard, completely regular baseline complex oscillator. Now, without the control voltage input from this noise generator, we would have a tone at somewhere around 700 Hertz. What the noise generator is bringing to the party is the tiny wobble. That's what you get, that's what it sounds like when you use a noise signal as a modulation source. It's pretty damned unpleasant. Let's send it into the timbre control instead. Again, it's adding a shimmer to the modulation. Where I think it's coolest though is if we send it back into the pitch but invert the polarity. Now you get a really cool rumble. tiny little wobbling oscillation adds great flavour to these really low rumbling nastiness kind of sounds. You can see it just shimmering left and right. It is a meaty sound. The third setting on the preamp, FB, stands for feedback. And in order to get this up and running, we need to jump through a few hoops. Firstly, I need to put the low pass gate in voltage controlled amplifier mode. And I'm going to have to just do a few bits of tweaking. Actually, we're pretty much good to go. I'll take that away for now. So your settings on the modulation oscillator need to be right for this effect to work. What's going to happen is that the modulation oscillator is going to take a feed from the preamp. We've just seen that, and that signal is going to come through this gate and then get fed back into the modulation oscillator, and we'll have basically an infinite loop. To get it to start feeding back, we need to fully open gate 2. We need to be very careful about our output levels, and let's see what we can get. You get a kind of different thing every time you try this. It's so cool. So I'm in low frequency oscillator mode here. There we go. Let's take an envelope in. There we go. So I want the envelope constantly triggering. Now with a little bit of messing around. Oh, I lost it. Come back. There we go. You can get it right on the edge of being lost. And you get some really cool chatter effects. There we go. Lost it again. It is an absolute... Ooh, come back. Excellent. Probably talking to an empty room after that demonstration, but let's press on anyway. Next component we have to talk about is the inverter. Now, I must confess, I have a few issues with the inverter. First things first, let's just hear it. Get a signal, get an envelope, into a pitch. Okay, instead of taking the output straight from the envelope, send it through the inverter. Now we go the opposite way. But the upper and lower limits of the inverted signal are not the opposite of the regular shape signal. Got a notepad. I mean, I did try to figure out what the effect was. Basically, you've got kind of an offset sort of thing. So whatever the range is that you're working with, let's say I was working from like C1 to C2, when you invert it, you'd go from like E flat 1 to E flat 2 in the opposite direction. So it does invert the signal, but it doesn't invert it around a consistently central axis. It seems to offset it slightly, and I don't know why. But it is absolutely consistent in what it does. If I apply some modulation to the timbre instead, now when I invert that, it will start off brighter and finish off brighter as well. It's basically going to go backwards but offset. See, it's much brighter up at the top now. So it does tell an absolutely consistent story. When you do an inversion, it also shifts it up in control voltage. I don't know why. You can get a really interesting effect by doing kind of a double inversion. So if I flip the polarity, then the inverter's going like the opposite way, and then the polarity switch flips it back again. And you get to operate over some really cool there you go, that's below the limit of hearing now. Get some interesting tone. Keep an eye on my audio levels. What a fantastic rumble that is. Finally, a very quick mention of the reverb section. We have a spring reverb, and obviously an emulation of a spring reverb. So I've just set myself up a really simple oscillator, a little bit of sustain on my envelope. Quite a nice spring reverb. And we're finally done. That's the low pass gate and output sections covered now. In the next episode, we'll deal with the sequential voltage source, or the sequencer, and we'll see not only how it can make tonal patterns and interesting arpeggio or sequenced effects, but we've also got that available as a modulation source. We'll see what we can do with it. Hope to see you then. Thanks very much for watching.